we have a quorum here. Only Kim Cashin is absent, so I'm going to start the meeting. Thank you guys for showing up. Do we have any oral communications for items not on the agenda? Okay, no public comment. Okay, we need to approve the minutes for the last meeting of June 18th. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second, Wanda, thank you. Okay, all in favor? Aye, thank you. That includes you, right, Chris? Oh, you are absent. Okay. Thank you. Yeah, you don't get to vote. Okay, so the first thing on our agenda is to welcome Len Waterman and Stephanie Lau of One Shoreline. They're going to talk about their insurability initiative and that, what would be entailed for a pilot project. Actually, I need to find the slides, so just give me a second here. Let's see. Oops. Is that showing up okay?
Yeah, so it's a PDF, is that right? Do you have the PowerPoint? Because the PowerPoint.
I have the PowerPoint, but I only did it as a PDF. I didn't see any notes in the PowerPoint.
It's not notes, it's that things advance on the slides to help tell the story. If you have the PowerPoint, that would be great. If not, then we can.
Okay. Sorry.
Into the mic. How's that? Yeah, okay. Okay. Sorry about that.
Can somebody help me set up the PowerPoint here?
I can.
Let's see, wait a second. Oops.
There you go. And then you want to hit.
Yeah, wait, let me share it first.
Oh, yep.
Is that the PowerPoint? Okay, so what do I do here to get it in mode? Click that one.
Yep.
Continue to share.
There we go. Yeah.
And
Okay. Good morning, everybody. My name is Len Matterman, and I run a special district, which means it was created by state law. In our case, in 2019, it's a countywide, San Mateo County-wide special district. We're called the San Mateo County Flood and Sea Level Rise Resiliency District. So we think about climate change in terms of all water issues, and that ranges from big storms that come through here, coastal flooding, drought, water quality. All of those things are in our state legislation. It was signed by the governor 7 years ago, and we opened our doors in 2020. We're based in the city of San Mateo. That's where our offices are, but we work countywide. We are known as One Shoreline. I run the agency. Stephanie Lau is on our team, and she works on all kinds of issues, including our initiative that we'll talk about today. We also have joining us Carolyn Kuski. Carolyn runs a nonprofit. She's on the East Coast, and she's been working on insurance issues related to climate change for many years, and she'll talk about her experiences and bring a broader context to this conversation. I'll start with a few minutes of kind of what we're doing and why us, and then turn it over to Carolyn, and then your questions and conversation. Next slide, please.
oops.
Yep. So why work on climate change and insurability in San Mateo County? And actually, I should have said, I want to thank Helen Walter, who I've known for a long time, and she kind of introduced me to bring me here today. And also MJ. MJ and I had a conversation several months ago about this, and here we are today. Insurability to us means access to affordable insurance. And you'll hear me say the word insurability a lot, but it really is about two things. It's access and affordability. And those two things go hand in hand frequently. Sometimes they're separate, but we'll talk about that. So why work on it in San Mateo County? You can advance the slide. And yeah, so the scenario for San Mateo County in terms of insurance is that between 2018 and 2024, costs increased, not related to flood insurance or earthquake insurance, but costs for home insurance increased 55%. Of course, since 2024, that number would be much higher because just in the last 2 years, as you know, there have been many increases for folks here and elsewhere. And then you can advance. We'll go through the bullets. You can advance this. Yeah. So the number of California FAIR Plan policies in San Mateo County is 9 times greater just in the past 6 years. That is a huge increase. And I'm assuming all of you know what the FAIR Plan is. Otherwise, we could talk about it, but I won't get into it. I'll make that assumption. If there are any questions about it, Carolyn actually is better than me in explaining kind of how the FAIR Plan works, and she'll talk about that. You can advance. Yeah. So flood insurance is something we worry about too. And as you'll see, we're working on flood insurance issues as well. Excuse me. I won't get into that today, but just to say it is an issue in San Mateo County. And the underinsurance of the, meaning people, a lot of people that get flooded don't have flood insurance. And that's an issue as well. MJ? Okay, so here's kind of a summary. Increasing risks and damages strains the insurance markets and, of course, family budgets. Long-term for municipalities, that has an effect because property values, of course, we haven't seen reduction in property values in our area, but long-term, what we're seeing around the country is that climate change is affecting property values. We will not be immune to that in the future. That will affect municipal and county budgets pretty significantly. And all of us, I think, can agree, including the insurance industry, that a goal is to have a stable market for both housing and insurance. And right now, of course, we don't have a stable market for insurance statewide. Okay, MJ. Okay, so you can advance it again. We have a pilot, our first pilot in this program that we call the Home Protection and Insurability Pilot was in San Bruno. We did that last year where we gave grants to 26 homes in San Bruno that are in a low-income area that frequently flood during storms and high tides. And so that was our first effort to work directly with homeowners on protecting them from, in this case, flooding. And it's in the suite of this initiative. It's a different project than what we're talking about today, but just to say we launched that last year in the fall in San Bruno. We're going to work on it this year in San Bruno again, but also in East Palo Alto. And we're also expanding to this wildfire-related insurance program. MJ? Okay, so if you look at our website, you see One Shoreline and you see this picture. And you might say, well, why is One Shoreline working on wildfire issues? MJ, if you want to advance the slide, you can advance it again. Yeah, thank you. So our mission is to build climate resilience, which we view broadly to include the economic resilience of property owners and municipalities. For several years, since we've been established in 2020, we've had Stanford graduate students working with us, master's students and PhD students. Many of them have worked on the insurance question because it's been an emerging kind of crisis. In 2023, the California Department of Insurance drafted a bill to establish pilot projects around the state and with 8 agencies. And our agency was one of the 8. Many of them, several of them were in Southern California, a couple of them in the far north, the foothills area of California. But we worked with the California Department of Insurance to understand what their interests are in terms of pilot projects and how we could benefit from their activities. So finally, I think we're a good agency to move this forward because just like these perils of wildfire and flood, We're not constrained by municipal boundaries. It's hard for a city sometimes to do work in the neighboring city or to do even a collaborative project between cities. And that's essentially why we were created by state law, was recognizing that climate doesn't have these boundaries. And so this initiative pushes that envelope a little bit on perils that cross borders, of course. MJ, next slide. Okay, why start in Portola Valley? So we're just getting going on the wildfire piece. We have a relationship with Portola Valley, our agency. One of the key people that helped to found our agency and develop the state legislation was also on our founding board in 2020, was the Portola Valley town councilwoman. And then, of course, Helen and I have been talking about this issue for a while. Portola Valley, of course, has a high risk of wildfire, as you all know. That's why you're sitting here today. And you're working to increase the level of firewires in your community. MJ and Stephanie and I just talked about that map that's behind me. And then finally, the last bullet, which I want to kind of highlight, is that the percent of residential structures in the 94028 zip code, which of course in parts is outside of the town, but mostly the town, has increased from 7.9% in December of 2024. So that's about 15, between December 2024 and March 2026. That's about 15 months, increased from 7.9% of properties, of structures on the FAIR plan to 14.6%. By this December, meaning 2 years later, it'll probably be at a point where it doubled, because right now it's increased as of March by 85%. By the end of this year, we'll probably be close to that 100% increase in just 2 years, prop structures on the FAIR plan. So what, if you want to advance the slide. So why develop the pilot when the community is working on Firewise? And MJ and I talked about this, and she communicated that you all are really focused on the Firewise expansion, which I think is great. And so I want to explain how we see this as complementing that effort rather than in any way kind of diverting from that effort. You want to advance the slide? So insurance products are more affordable if they take into account property and community risk reduction. Seems obvious. If you protect your property, that should be reflected in insurance, both in premiums and kind of what the offerings are, the access to insurance. But that's not the case, right? A lot of people are doing things on their property and they still get a bill the next year for the re-up of their insurance, and they see a huge increase. Part of that is because of statewide issues, but it's also because of local issues. Or they get a letter that's saying, we're dropping you. You can look for other options. And a lot of times the only other option is the FAIR plan. So the first bullet should be true, but it's not always, and frequently not. Second, go ahead, MJ, if you want to advance. So insurability is more likely if those actions are guided by the insurance industry models and maps rather than government data. That also should make sense, meaning a private company will reward actions that are based on what the private company knows rather than what the state CAL FIRE is saying about a map. Intuitively, that makes sense, but the problem is that a lot of our actions are guided by government data and not by the insurance data and maps. And so what this initiative is about is bringing the insurance industry into the equation of what mitigation should look like, so that we can increase access and affordability to private insurance markets and not force people onto the FAIR plan. Do you want to go to the next bullet, which kind of summarizes some of that? So One Shorelines initiative is different from existing efforts in that we're focused from the very beginning on both home protection and insurability. And so we view the alternative to doing something that looks at the private insurance market, data and maps. The alternative to that is essentially the status quo. And we know what that looks like. A lot of work, increasing insurance, people getting dropped for the FAIR plan. And so we're trying to disrupt that dynamic by saying, let's try to work with the insurance industry at the front end on what that mitigation looks like. We still have Woodside Fire, CAL FIRE saying, here's things you should do. But let's incorporate the insurance industry into that discussion of mitigation actions, both at the specific home property level and also at the community level, so that we can actually improve the insurability problem. Next bullet. Okay, so what does our kind of structure look like? What it looks like is government, nonprofit, private sector, 3 entities. Government is our local agency. We're also talking with Congressman Liccardo's office. They're working on a similar initiative in the Santa Clara County side involving 3 communities, Saratoga, Los Gatos, and Montesrino. And we're not working on that. We work in San Mateo County, but we're kind of comparing notes and hoping to move along things in a coordinated way. And Congressman Liccardo's and his team in the district office are very supportive of that. And then on the nonprofit side, you'll meet Carolyn Kuski in just a minute. And then on the private sector side, it's with major insurance companies that we're talking to. Okay. While we may pilot, well, the pilot may partner with Firewise, it's really outside of the Firewise context. We view it as complementary to Firewise because the more that Firewise does, the better you can have the prospects of insurability. But we want to add the additional layer of what the private sector is saying. Here's what you need to do if you want to improve your insurability. So in terms of steps and timeline, here we are in terms of identifying neighborhoods. We've also met with folks in Hillsborough a few months ago about this, and we're talking with communities, leadership from communities kind of along the coast on the other side of the hill, but still in the hills area. So that's where we're at right now in terms of reaching out to identify neighborhoods as potential partners. And then MJ, you could just actually advance the next few things. And this is just kind of how things look over the next year or so in terms of risk modeling that we would do in the fall, developing financing strategies. One of the things that we'd like to do is, and Carolyn is actually taking the lead on this because she has the relationships with foundations and nonprofits in California and throughout the United States on this topic, is to help develop financing strategies to address part of the cost of the issue of mitigation for the individual homeowner and for the community scale work. So that activity is going to be ongoing this fall. In the early 2027, we would have the community meeting with the insurance companies, with their leadership, and talk about what the results are and what this might mean for the community. And MJ, if you want to just go advance twice more, we'll go through this slide. And then in the spring and summer of 2027, kind of move forward with here's the specific proposal for properties in a community. And the last thing I'll say before I turn it to Carolyn is this doesn't necessarily, in fact, it probably would make less sense if it was the whole of Portola Valley. What we're looking for is a section of Portola Valley that is particularly vulnerable to fire and also particularly impacted by the insurability crisis. So it could be 25 homes. It doesn't have to be the whole town. And that's what we haven't set the scale, but in our conversations with insurance industry leaders, their preference is not to take on that much risk at once, but to really kind of zero in on a particular neighborhood that their models and maps say, if you do these things, here's where the biggest difference can be made from our perspective, our meaning the insurance company's perspective, and then they can provide a product. And so the scale of this is quite flexible. All right, I'm going to turn it over to Carolyn for a few minutes to talk about from her perspective on the national scene, and she works statewide. MJ, if you want to advance the slide for Carolyn, she can keep going. Okay, Carolyn, I'll turn it over to you. Thanks.
Great. Yeah, thanks, Len. You can go back one because we thought maybe it would be useful to just, before getting into some of the details, if you go back one slide, I'll just tell you 1 minute about us, since we're probably a new organization to most of you. So I'm the Executive Director of Insurance for Good. We're an independent 501c3 nonprofit that works with communities and the public sector on insurance-related solutions that can support their broader goals around recovery and resilience. We do a lot of educational programming and capacity building. We partner locally, like we're doing with One Shoreline, on thinking through solutions development and new innovations. And then we do a lot of research and data analysis to support improved policy and regulation. As Len said, we work across the country, but we have a lot of of activity in California, which is fun and exciting. So beyond the wonderful partnership with One Shoreline, we've been supporting the state with background research around insurance issues. We're partnering with the Department of Housing and Community Development and the Department of Insurance on similar topics of capacity building and innovation around fire and flooding. We've done some work supporting funding and financing mitigation measures in the aftermath of the LA fires, and other similar types of partnerships around the state. So I think that's enough on that, but that's who we are. So maybe it's worth saying we're a very young nonprofit. We're only 2 years old this summer, but I've been working on issues of disaster insurance and disaster policy and climate resilience for the last 2 decades. So I'm not new to this topic. Okay, next slide. I was just going to say a little bit more detail on different parts of the pilot. So the first was the wildfire modeling. And so what's kind of underlying the pilot here is doing this more detailed look, drawing on models that insurance carriers use themselves to better understand the property level fire risk in the neighborhood. And through that, identifying what the most cost-effective loss reduction investments are to really bend that loss curve to bring down potential losses to a point where insurers feel much more comfortable offering coverage, taking people off the FAIR plan, or offering coverage at lower prices. The industry is really focused on a different type of model than a lot of the public sector. A lot of the kind of free and public models focus on the hazard, which is the vegetation, the slope, the wind conditions, like what makes fire in the wildlands possible. But what's of most concern to the industry is when that fire in the natural lands enters the built environment, and then particularly when it becomes a home-to-home urban conflagration. That's when we see the losses like we saw in LA, like we saw in Paradise, like the 2017 and 18 fires. And that requires a different type of modeling that can account for how structures are built, how close together they are, and what's happening in the space in between the homes. So it's a much different type of model than, say, underneath the CAL FIRE maps. But in doing that, you can then use those models to say, okay, what if we change these aspects of the built environment? How does that change the risk and end up with these prioritized level of risk reductions that would get us to this broad concept of insurability? And maybe I also, Len, it's maybe worth saying, like another key component of this pilot concept is that a lot of the modeling that insurers use is really hidden from consumers and policyholders, right? They use models that are proprietary, that are kind of black box to everyone else. And part of what we are trying to do here and what some of our insurance partners are excited about is getting on the same page about the risk with everyone involved in managing that risk. So the idea is that these outputs from these models would be open and shared and up for discussion and investigation with the neighborhood as well. Okay, next slide. And then also, as Len mentioned, once we get this prioritized list of like what needs to be done to really lower the fire risk to a level that dramatically improves insurance market outcomes, depending on what that is, it could be fairly inexpensive for a home or a community. It could be much more expensive. So we're also working through what are the sources of dollars to make those investments. When do we need public sector funds, philanthropy? When do we need improved financing? We're in conversations with some lenders that are willing to think about making things like low interest loans or guaranteed loans for financing. So yeah, when do we need grants and favorable financing in order to get the work done? What's that package look like? And also talking with other groups around the state who are also thinking about things like, how can we bring down the cost of some of these household level investments if we think about doing them at scale? So you have one person come in and do the vents for every home in a neighborhood at the same time. That can radically reduce the cost then if each home is doing it individually. So also thinking about models like that. Next slide. And then the last thing I wanted to kind of mention is that, as Len said, insurability, the way we've been talking about it, has these two dimensions. One is just having coverage available when you need it. And then the second is the cost of that coverage. And the California Department of Insurance has issued regulations that require every insurer in the state who provides homeowners insurance to offer premium discounts for certain types of investments in risk reduction. And we've synthesized all those. We can share them with you by type of mitigation measure. What we're showing you here is a summary by different firms, the top 5 writers of homeowners insurance in the state, and what types, kind of the maximum discounts you can now get from those firms. And so part of the work is also aligning the mitigation investments with these types of premium rewards that are available. And I think that might be the last slide, but if you advance once more, yes, we can confirm. Okay, thank you. Back to you, Len.
Okay, so now we can open it up for questions and discussion. Thank you.
No question. Can you hear me? So
Oh,
Maybe close it.
Vivek, you have to talk right into the mic.
how about now?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's great.
So there's a difference between how the insurance company views the peril of homeowners of the homes being destroyed versus what we normally view. I mean, but that must be the reason why, despite all these efforts, the premiums still go up, right? So I think Caroline referred to one of those differences, which is the hazard to the home versus the surrounding communities, and also the home-to-home transitions. So you're saying those are the things that we need to focus on, even if we're doing this Firewise effort, those are the things we need to focus on in order to really make those efforts produce the fruit of lower premiums. Is that what you're saying?
So I'll take a stab at your question, and I'll ask Carolyn to augment what I'm about to say. From my perspective, based on our conversations with the president of Mercury Insurance, and we're starting to work with Mercury, but we're not wed to Mercury. The reason we're starting with Mercury is that last slide. If you noticed on the far right, Mercury offers way bigger discounts for mitigations than any of the other big five, so to speak, insurance companies throughout California. So in our conversations with the president of Mercury and his team, they've given us the very specific actions that would result in specific discounts that they would offer to homeowners. So a lot of those actions are the same things that the fire district or CAL FIRE recommend. But some of those things are different. Some of those things are less onerous to the property. So they have a different view in some cases of vegetation management. And so it would be just a conversation about here's what for example, here's what Mercury is saying needs to be done to offer these discounts. Here's what the fire district and CAL FIRE is saying. A lot of times those things will overlap. Sometimes they'll be different. And we'd talk with Mercury about exactly what needs to be done. I know there's a lot of concern by property owners about what their property will look like after all is said and done in terms of mitigation. And, you know, we want, if there are opportunities to based on the private sector models to increase insurability, we think we should have that conversation with the property owner. So hopefully that answers your question. And Carolyn, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, I might just add a couple of things, and that's exactly right. One is that another piece of it is not just what are those exact measures, which exactly as Len said, sometimes there'll be overlap, sometimes there might not be, but also that insurers, most of the ones we've talked to, including Mercury, believe that packages of mitigation measures need to be done together to really have the impact on whether the home burns. And so it's also about what is that suite of measures that need to all be done in what type of package. And so that's a little bit of a different messaging, because it's not, oh, you can just pick one or every little bit helps. It's like you have to get this package done for them. And if you're missing a few pieces in the package, it's not going to cut it. You have to do the whole package. And so we need to communicate about what that is. And then I'll also say, maybe to add on to what Len was saying too, about one of the reasons we're excited to start this partnership with Mercury as one of the first firms we work with, is because there are some insurers right now in the state who have felt that they have too much fire risk and they can't get the right price for it. And so they're just pulling out of zip codes that they think are too risky. And Mercury is really willing to go into those zip codes and say, okay, at a high level, we have fire risk here. How do we make it safer to stay and keep offering insurance, which is a kind of different perspective. And in that conversation, to this point, especially about the aesthetics of the property, they are really willing to have that dialogue about how to make it work well. So if you want to keep that tree in 0 to 5, they won't make you cut it down, but maybe they'll talk about whether a limb is touching the roof. So it gets really specific, but that's helpful because it opens up greater paths to meeting everyone's needs.
And
The reason I'm asking this question is because we are now expanding our Firewise work.
Correct.
And I've noticed that I talked to State Farm the other day about my own home, and they said if you're Firewise, you get a 2% discount in your premiums. Now, that's not enough. I mean, that's not enough attractive enough for people to be motivated about being Firewise. The more attractive thing would be either a much more a better discount on the premiums, or in fact, just insurability itself. As you said, the access and affordability are related. So it seems to me it would be the timeliness of this is great because it would be a good time to integrate some of this thinking into the Firewise, not just do Firewise as it is today, where there's a limited discount, but Firewise integrated with some of these efforts. And that will be more motivational for people to actually participate and volunteer to do this. So it seems to be a timely thing to take into account some of these things. So we should kind of work together on this because all of us are working on improving, expanding Firewise.
Maybe you have a question. I'll add one thing to respond to his question and follow up what Carolyn said. You might be wondering, like, why are we coming to you? What is the role of your committee for our pilot? Because in a sense, we're outside of the Portola Valley town infrastructure, let's say, right? We're a different agency potentially working with Licardo's team on the other side. So what this pilot really needs to work at the earliest stages, meaning over the next few months, is to identify an area that's most logical for this effort and what that looks like in terms of number of properties, as I said before. We're very flexible on that. And to work with the individual homeowners. Because what Carolyn said is really important is if we have, let's say we have a street, and I think a lot of Portola Valley streets are maybe non-traditional streets. They go through the woods and whatnot, which is amazing. But if we have a street and there are 18 properties on that street and 3 of them or 9 of them sign on, it's a lot less effective and attractive to the insurance industry. And so part of what we would look to the committee to do, as well as people like Helen Wolter, is to work with the property owners to also talk with them about what this looks like and what the insurance industry models would say. And we would bring into that conversation the model results from the insurance industry to show them, here's the kinds of things that would need to be done. But it is important that neighbors work together on this. It's not one-offs. And I think we all understand that from just kind of understanding how wildfires work now. Yes, ma'am. I know you had a question.
I'm a little concerned about messaging. So I think we're really bombarding all of our residents. I'm hungry. Residents with do this, do that, do this, do that, do this. And Firewise in and of itself doesn't ask them to do anything. It informs, it educates, it makes them aware. But, Kim's here today. We have this program with Woodside Fire where they're going around and inspecting every home in Portola Valley and telling them, here's what you need to do to comply with zone 0, whatever. And then we come in and say, oh, well, one shoreline says you need to do this. And the insurance industry says, do this, not that. I mean, I'm just concerned that we're bombarding people. And unless we get a concerted effort in cooperation with Woodside Fire and Firewise, because that's our communication vehicle, that they're just going to throw up their hands and say, what the F do you want me to do? Tear everything down?
Yeah. No, I think that is a very valid concern. And I think the underlying issues associated with insurance right now are also bombarding people and stressing people. And so we need to be very thoughtful. I agree with you and work with you closely on what that looks like. And again, this probably wouldn't be a town-wide messaging. And I wanted to also respond to one thing. It's not one shoreline telling you what you have to do. It's one shoreline and our partners in Carolyn and the insurance industry giving you more information so that you can make decisions about whether you want to have insurability and front of mind when you think about the mitigation you do. And in terms of Woodside Fire, I think that's great. And Woodside Fire is doing an amazing job of working with property owners to protect themselves. And again, we're What we're trying to do is layer on an additional amount of information coming out of the private sector modeling that allows homeowners to sign up for the concept of I'm prioritizing insurability for my property in addition to protection. And the insurance industry, what they'll tell you is if you look at the actions that lead to those mercury discounts, those are actual actions, right? I mean, those are protection things, and they relate to vegetation, they relate to vents, they relate to all the kinds of things that we know lead to fire spread. So again, I think there's a lot of overlap, but what we're trying to do is just provide information so that the homeowner has a chance to get out of the cycle of doing the mitigations and then getting the letter that says we're dropping you or your rates are going up because of these reasons. They'll get that letter anyway because of what happened in LA and other larger factors, but we want to create a chance for them to have insurability be something that they value and not just leave it up to the kind of status quo whim of the insurance industry.
So,
Yeah, sir, yes.
go ahead.
No, yeah.
So if I understand, it sounds like you'd like to start with effectively a pilot of a group. Is there something that's more or less attractive to you? I mean, we've got things like PV Ranch where it's dense and structure is probably more realistic spread. And then somewhere like Westridge where it's going to be more embers and things like that. We'll probably optimize around different mitigation things and also have different challenges in terms of enlisting a community. What's ideal from your perspective in terms of who we should be targeting?
I'm going to ask Carolyn to respond to that first.
Yeah, I think maybe the first lens on that, and to answer this conversation too about the messaging, is that the first pilot neighborhood should be somewhere that's really struggling with insurance, where there's a lot of people on the FAIR plan, say, or where rates have gone up a lot, to have this more nuanced conversation about, you know, there are things that need to be done for fire risk, for life safety, evacuation, like, right? And those may or may not be the things that will actually bring your insurance back. But it needs to be a group that are motivated to want to engage with the industry to get their coverage back. I think FAIR plan concentration is a good first look at that because, as I can see, Helen put in chat from first experience, right? The FAIR plan is much more expensive. The coverage is much more limited. And people do not have good things to say about how they handle claims. And so getting off that can be a huge improvement for people. So picking somewhere that's not struggling with insurance is not the place to start, right? Given the nature of what we're trying to do. But Len, you probably want to add to that.
Yeah, no, yeah, that sounds good. I mean, I think there are other, like, let's say technical factors to consider, like what you described in terms of house to house, and if it's near an open space or park that's particularly thought of as an entry point for fire. I think those would come into play, but probably at the front end, I agree with Caroline.
I think it's a little bit, sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah.
A couple of points. I think it's a little bit, not dangerous is the wrong term, but to kind of give the people the hope that they will get the insurance back as a result of this activity. I think, it's maybe unrealistic to do that. So I wouldn't message that, but I would message more reduction of insurance premiums or something like that, which is more realistic. Because once insurance is taken away, it's very hard to bring it back. I think even with this, I mean, unless you have evidence to the contrary. That's just one point that I wanted to make about this. And so we've got to be careful about that. The second piece I want to make is the pilot piece to address Patty's concern. Doing a limited pilot will, before we engage townwide on this as messaging, would allow us to kind of mitigate that concern that there would be too much type of messaging. So we should probably focus on a pilot for a small number of homes and select the appropriate place to do that based on all these issues. And that could mitigate some of the issues. So it wouldn't interfere right now with our Firewise plan, and not to change that messaging and won't interfere with the Woodside plan, but more make it a limited pilot, show that the pilot actually has an impact, either through insurance reductions, premium reductions, or through re-securing your insurance. So it has an impact before we go.
Right. In a sense, we'd be kind of under the radar with this particular neighborhood, let's say, while you do the work that you do and Woodside Fire does the work that it does, and we would concentrate on the neighborhood that we pick, focus with those property owners, And, hopefully a year from now, we have a great story to tell, and then we can talk about kind of a broader communication. Carolyn, do you want to touch on the good point about kind of over-promising on getting people off the FAIR plan?
Yeah, 100% we should not overpromise, and we should be very careful with the messaging and workshop that back and forth a lot before we put it out there. So 100% agree on that. But I did want to say that we're at a moment though, right now in the state where there is increasing interest in picking safer homes in the FAIR plan and getting them out, because the commissioner has adopted this regulatory reform that gives insurance companies more freedom in what they charge and what their contracts look like if in exchange they start writing more in high risk areas. Particularly, they get lots of bonus points if they take people off the FAIR plan. So it's just created this moment where there are some carriers who are now trying to find FAIR plan policies that are actually not as risky as you might think. So it gives us like this extra little room to try to, work with them in that space.
Does anyone else have questions? Okay, so then I have a few.
MJ?
Oh, okay. So first of all, I want to thank Helen for bringing you guys here. I do agree. The only way we're going to solve the insurance problem is if we reduce our wildfire risk, and pilots like this could help us get there. However, I have a couple comments about your pilot. So one thing is that even if you did a pilot as small as 25 homes, there's no one, and they all did everything. There's no insurer who's going to insure all 25, because that's too much risk, and they're only going to take a small segment of those 25. Have you guys thought about that?
Yeah, I mean, we've talked specifically with Mercury about kind of what's their sweet spot for the number of homes. I would say 20. I mean, they also were non-committal in terms of all the other factors that go into what a neighborhood risk would look like. But certainly 25 was not something that scared them off. What they said is they would not do a whole town, even a town that's relatively small like Portola Valley, that they would want other insurers at the table with our pilot because of the reason you said, of they're assuming too much risk. And I would say the incentive for diversifying the insurance offerings is not really coming from the insurance industry. It would come from us, is that we would not, just as it's not One Shoreline telling somebody that they have to do a certain action on their home, we would not want to be seen as tied together with one insurer. That we're a government agency. That's not our job. Our job is to provide information, give people opportunities to let's say, expose them to the marketplace. And so Carolyn and others that she's working with have very good connections with the insurers you saw on that list and other insurers that are certified by the state. And so we're reaching out and have had conversations with others besides Mercury, and we'd like to be able to offer even an area of 25 homes as many options as possible. Carolyn, do you want to add anything quickly?
No, I think it's a great point, and everything Len said is exactly right. And I'll also say that to participate in the pilot, the homeowner doesn't have to agree to anything. They don't have to agree to switching carriers or using any of the ones who are agreeing to work with us on this pilot. And they could always go back to their own insurance agent and say, I've done this type of mitigation. Will you reshop my policy, or will you? So I just wanted to be clear that we're not going to ask homeowners to make any types of commitments or lock-ins, obviously.
Okay, so then my next question is, most of the homes in Portola Valley would probably be in the $2 to $7 million value range. So wouldn't that rule out a lot of insurers?
Carolyn?
No. In fact, we have some insurers that prefer to work with high net worth homeowners as well. So, yeah.
Okay. Then my third question is, Helen brought this forward to us. I talked to her just before this meeting, and she was saying that her assumption was that you guys would probably use Stanford students like you did for your flooding initiative to help, raise awareness or because our Firewise leaders are not at that level yet where they can start, trying to get people to do more work. Was that your understanding that you guys would be using, your own people?
I mean, right now it's myself and Stephanie, our staff, right? And Carolyn, and then our conversations with the private sector folks, and Licardo's office. We hadn't really thought about using Stanford students for this program. We have a couple Stanford students that are working with us now this summer, so graduate students, but they're not working on this initiative, and it's not something that we had contemplated. And so I think when we identify the location for the pilot, whether it's Portola Valley or somewhere else, we would develop the team around that's needed to reach out to the homeowners, and we'd work with folks like you. So we haven't really.
Okay. Yeah, that's fine. And then my last question is, would you consider working with the specialty non-admitted insurers instead of only admitted insurers?
We just recently talked about that. I'll defer to Carolyn because she is more familiar on the state level with what makes sense.
I think that's a great question. As you are probably aware, there's like pros and cons here. The non-admitted specialty insurers are not backed by the state guarantee fund. So were they to go insolvent after a big fire, consumers would not have the protection of the state behind them, which is why CDI and regulators and policymakers tend to not want to be pushing consumers into those. That said, there's a number of new surplus firms coming into the California market that are incredibly well capitalized, just as safe as any of the admitted carriers from a solvency risk perspective, and ahead of the game of the rest of the industry in terms of reflecting loss reduction and wanting to grow their business. So I think there are a lot of benefits to working with some of those, and we've been in touch with some of them as well. But I think it would have to be a kind of honest conversation with the homeowner about what choice they were making.
Okay, thank you. So we, originally this was supposed to be a 10-minute thing. So, Rebecca, you wanted to say something, right?
I just wanted to understand a little bit more about the criteria for potentially choosing a neighborhood. You had talked a little bit about 25 homes, but is that kind of what you're looking for, or is it a different size? And then the presentation said that the biggest concern for insurers is a wildfire that then becomes a structure-to-structure urban conflagration. So are you looking for a neighborhood that has homes that are close together or not? And then the question is availability of funding. You've spoken about plans to search for funding. Is there some funding available for people to do mitigation? And are you looking for a neighborhood that could afford to do some of these mitigations? Say they would need to spend $20,000. Would the committee look for a neighborhood that had people who could afford those types of mitigations, or is that not as big an issue?
Well, there's a lot of questions there, and I think some of them refer to this gentleman's questions about whether we choose a neighborhood. We'll call it a neighborhood based on proximity of homes or proximity to an entry point for fire. I guess what I would say is, I personally would find it difficult to choose a neighborhood, or at least actively seek out which neighborhood to work with based on a perception of affordability of doing the mitigation. I think that might be fraught a little bit. And I think we start with, as Carolyn said, we start with fair plan concentration. That's usually a good indication of the insurance industry's perception of risk. And those folks are usually the most incentivized to be active on this, and then maybe go from there. But I mean, I think all we were looking for today for this presentation is an expression by the committee that you're interested in working with us to have the next detailed conversation, which would get to, I think, some of your questions, and not necessarily a firm commitment, but something that says, as a committee, this is important to us, we're interested in this. And, we could come back in a couple months at a future meeting and maybe dive into a little bit more of the details. And maybe also we could do some research on fair plan concentration between them in collaboration with the town. Carolyn, do you want to add anything to response to her questions?
No, I think that's right. Yeah.
Just to add on, you talk about fair plan concentration. Is there a map available of that?
Carolyn.
We have, I can send you a link to a map that lets you zoom into zip code level. So that would kind of be all of Portola Valley. The fair plan itself does not release the addresses of its policies. And so the finest geographic level we have right now of those that can be made public is at a zip code level, but I can share a link to that if it's helpful.
And so identifying a fair plan concentration in the town might be a conversation with all of you about your experience of talking and being in the neighborhood and talking with your neighbors, things like that. Right, Carolyn?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, a key next step would be working with you all to identify that neighborhood, because that kind of starts, then we could go to the insurance industry and say, okay, focus in your modeling on this neighborhood and we'll come back with some results in the fall.
Okay, so I think Vivek has
Yeah,
one
just
more.
just very quick question. Have you actually done a successful pilot? When I say word successful, in this community, in this area, it doesn't have to be Portola Valley, obviously, anywhere in the Bay Area, where you've actually demonstrated that has that happened yet?
Not on Wildfire, no. I mean, as she said, we've been working in San Bruno, and we're working with the largest reinsurance company in the world on how to translate the activities in San Bruno into insurance outcomes for this neighborhood. But that's for one. I mean, One Shoreline's only been around 6 years. We started this about a year ago, this initiative, because we were hearing from people, because we do climate, right? Climate. And we were hearing from people, well, our biggest climate problem right now, other than maybe an atmospheric river that comes in, or the king tide if I'm on the bay or whatever in Pacifica, is insurance. So what can we do about that? So a year ago, we fleshed this out, we developed this, and this is our first entree into Wildfire. Carolyn is also working down in San Diego on a similar effort with the government there, local government. And as I said, we may work in partnership with the Santa Clara.
So this would be your first pilot.
This would be the first pilot, which I think creates opportunities and
Risks.
But I mean, like what we were talking about, going to the homeowner and talking about this, at the end of the day, the homeowner has to say, the status quo isn't working for me. It's like, this is going in the wrong direction and let's do something. And I think we're not convinced that we pick a neighborhood and it's the perfect neighborhood, or a year from now, it will all have come together the way exactly we wanted. But we're trying to start something different and disrupt the dynamic that's existing, which I think everybody would really get some relief from.
All right, so Len would like to see whether or not we want to make a motion or have some discussion on if we have any interest in this. I mean, seems like the first step would be identifying the neighborhood if we were interested. So does anyone want to make a motion?
Well, I applaud anything that we do, trust me. So I'll make a motion that the committee take the next step to look into what it would take to engage One Shoreline in a potential pilot
I'll second.
for Portola Valley.
Okay, so the committee takes the next step to
Take the next steps to engage One Shoreline in what it would take to develop a pilot program in Portola Valley. Not committing to it, just engage
Totally.
in the
Yeah.
discussion.
Yeah, that goes both ways.
It's all talk. Could talk. I could talk a lot.
Especially in light of this Firewise thing, I'll second that motion.
Yeah.
I'll second the motion.
Oh, you
Need a second, right?
because I'm trying to write this by hand.
Well, I
can't,
don't,
but-
did you just say it needed to be a Firewise
No,
community?
no, no. In light of what we're
Oh,
doing.
in light of Firewise.
I
Okay.
think
Yeah,
that
I
is
don't think we should.
reasonable thing to consider, so I
restrict
second the
it to a
motion.
Firewise.
Yeah, no, it's not, doesn't have to be
Yeah.
integrated with
That's true.
Firewise, but in light of the fact that we're doing that right now,
Right.
it seems like a reasonable thing to engage with you guys to investigate this and see if we can come to a conclusion on it.
So I'm sorry, I didn't get the whole phrase. So
Write faster. What are you doing?
this is a problem. I should be typing, but now I'm,
MJ, you can get it from the.
Engage in a pilot program.
okay,
can get it
wait,
from-
wait, the committee to
get
take
from-
the next step.
Engage with
during-
One Shoreline to investigate
To
implementing a pilot program in Portola Valley.
investigate implementing a pilot program in Portola Valley.
Whatever word you want to use, that's fine with me.
Okay, and Vivek is the second?
Yep.
Okay,
Second, yeah. I'm
we
seconding what
have any
she's
more
first
dis-
saying.
I'm sorry.
No, 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 no.
Oh, do
I
we have
second the
any-
motion.
Okay, do we have any more discussion?
We have
All
to
right.
name somebody to lead this.
Well,
Not right away.
what?
Never mind.
Not right away, but let's just approve the motion first and then, yeah.
Yeah, we could, well, no, that's a good one.
Well, I think we should appoint a point person, yeah, to,
Okay, so the motion would be, take the next step to engage One Shoreline to investigate, oh God, I can't even read my own writing. To investigate implementing the pilot program in Portola Valley headed by Chris.
Did Chris just volunteer?
Yay. Okay, so shall we take a vote?
Yes.
Anyone opposed? No, we're all in favor? Wow.
In favor.
And this is when I was telling Helen, don't come to the meeting. Okay, well.
Thank you all. Good to meet
Thank you.
you.
thank you.
Forward to
Stephanie.
Thank
exploring
you.
this with you.
Okay, so, are you guys all able to go till 11:30? Because I have a feeling that's what it's going to take today. Okay, so the next thing is the subsidiary body teleconferencing policy. You guys, if any of you read the agenda pack? Does anyone want a printed copy? Yeah, everyone knows what it is. Okay, so we just have to make a motion to approve this policy, right? You can pass it down.
I move the committee approve the teleconference policy.
Extend remote meeting.
Got it, okay.
That's all
Yeah,
it
we
is.
can attend by
By
Zoom and still hold.
Without violating Brown Act?
Well, okay, so I want to discuss this a little. I kind of like having here in person if we can be here. I mean, I just didn't want it to be just me sitting here. No, no problem with me sitting here by myself or no?
Well,
So, but you get my,
this is
Right.
not suggesting that we always do tele rather than in person, right? This is only saying it's okay.
Can be done. You're only saying it can be done. You can
Yeah.
do it.
yeah, it can be done. So like if you're traveling or you're too sick to come in or you have COVID or something, you could go.
Yeah, quite frankly, if we get in the habit of not doing in-person meetings, I will resign.
Oh, okay.
Oh, is that all it takes?
Approve that motion. No, just
Oh,
kidding.
yeah. Okay, okay, so the motion is to approve the teleconferencing policy, and that was from Patty and a second from Chris. Okay, and so we'll take a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, unanimous, thank you. Yeah, all right, so now we're on to fire marshal update. Thank you for your patience, Kim. I'm so sorry we ran over so much.
That's okay. Good morning, everybody. It was an interesting presentation. And before I get going with my update, I just wanted to touch on the presentation first, just to give you all some advice and just some feedback. First, to the town and to the residents of Portola Valley, if there's a lot of companies out there that do similar things like this. I would definitely take caution in any company you utilize. I've seen some companies that come in and kind of back to the points that you all made was they require a large scale of things from homeowners to do. And I can tell you from a few residents' experience that we went back out to speak to the residents that had these experiences, and it was like they clear cut like their entire property. And it was like, oh my gosh, your house, there wasn't much more you needed to do, because it was already, they were maintaining it very well. And we came back and it was like tons of trees gone. And anyway, not that this company necessarily would go to that extreme, but it's just the caution of, I definitely would want to have a strong coordination with whoever the town or residents want to go with, to make sure that the district's involved and listens to what they have to say and kind of vet what their actions are and plan is, because it's a good program to have if you're in an area that doesn't have any kind of local ordinance from the fire department that does anything, and people need to do something. But we definitely need to have a coordination. So that's one, I'd like to provide that and make sure that you have our support before making any decisions. Obviously, companies, even with the value and what they're trying to do, they are still a business, and we are not. We're here to support the residents and look out for the well-being of the towns. So of course, we will make sure that everything they're doing is within the parameters, not of in compliance with the district, but also what currently is in state laws and requirements, so that you're not being taken advantage of, basically. So just wanted to touch on that a little bit, just to give you all food for thought. For my updates, so first, jumping back in, this past month of June was a pretty busy month. Now that the fuels have really started to dry out, we have seen, and it's unfortunate, but it's just how our weather is here, multiple properties have had to do multiple segments of mowing, because the first mow they may have done in like April or May, which because things were kind of drying out on their properties, and now the regrowth is just like a lot. And so June has been busy with that for us. We have been serving many notices on properties that have not done their annual mowings for their hazardous vegetation or their dry grasses. And what I've noticed is it seems that a lot of residents feel that because we're not actively doing the home assessments in their area, they think that, oh, well, the fire department's not coming through my property, I don't need to do this. And we do have a local ordinance that's 365 days a year to maintain property. We're not saying that you need to mow all the time, but we're talking about when the fuels are getting dry, it needs to be done. We have to still maintain our properties and take care of our neighborhoods and communities surrounding it, which a lot comes down to residents keeping up with their part of their responsibilities. So we have been putting notices as we're driving around, going to other inspections. We're leaving these notices. We have a nuisance ordinance, and that ordinance is basically a 10-day notice. So you have 10 days to clear your property, or within the parameters, not, if you have 3 acres, it's not clearing all 3 acres. There are specific requirements. If you're within, 100 feet of a structure, or you own part of a roadway 10 feet off the road. So we're looking at more of the evacuation routes, that those are being maintained if you have ownership of land that goes into the right-of-ways. So we've been serving those notices. I'm not going to say in 10 days, bam, we give you some kind of citation. No, but we need to give people a timeline, because otherwise it may never get done. As long as we hear from residents saying, oh, I have somebody coming next week, maybe it's 14 days out, whatever. We're not really keeping, unless we're not hearing from anybody, then we're really holding people 10 days. A lot of people reach out to us and they have it done within 3 or 4 days, which is great, but we still have to keep that enforcement, because some people need extra motivation to do what they're supposed to do. So we keep that in place. The major milestone that we're going to be reaching is doing the full-scale community evacuation exercise. Hopefully, many of you are already aware and know about it, that this will take place on September 11th here in the town of Portola Valley. And the area that is going to be evacuated is the Ladera area. And we chose Ladera for this first exercise because they are a community that has narrow roads and limited ways in and out. And so we thought we'd start there, especially because our crews and Redwood City and Menlo Park Fire have all done their wildland training with specific in Los Trancos this year. That's where they dedicated their wildland training for exposure and awareness to our surrounding fire agencies that would be supporting us. So we wanted to follow up with doing the evacuation. It won't be on the operations side for fire department as far as them doing actual wildland operations. It's more to simulate what it's going to look like for residents when they're evacuating the area and engines are coming in and they're trying to get through while you're trying to get out, what kind of cluster it's going to create, what kind of chaos it's really going to create. All the theories of processes that we have in place, it's really going to put them to the test and see where our weak points are and see what actually works and doesn't work and what we can learn from it. We do have confirmation from Menlo Park Fire, Redwood City Fire, Cal Fire, the sheriff's office. We have invited, but we haven't heard back. This is just recent. Menlo Park PD, Atherton PD, and possibly East Palo Alto PD, because if we are needing more resources on the evacuation and roadblocks, we're going to need more assistance than just a sheriff. So it's going to be a coordinated effort, even with the other police departments. And then with the fire departments, they're going to be working on doing what we call structure triaging, which basically means if it's an area where the fire may potentially head to, they're going to be triaging, assessing houses on whether fire departments, when they do come through, if it's a safe place for them to defend a structure or for them to move on and call it a loss. So I think the triaging is important for residents to recognize why we have these ordinances in place and why you need to maintain your defensible space. It's not just to protect your house from wildfire, but it's also to give firefighters a defendable area that they can either find safe refuge or be able to defend neighborhoods and communities. They'll also be we're pushing out education through our Instagram account, and we'll be posting to all the IO groups and PV forum. There's a YouTube video that was very well done by Cal Fire, but it's the high-low sirens that are going to be utilized for evacuation. So that's the direction where we're going for evacuation. It came out a little bit over a year ago, I want to say. But all our apparatuses are all programmed with it. Sheriffs are programmed with it so that when people hear the sound of that siren, it means there's immediate evacuation. And that is another form rather than the traditional door knocking, because our property's long driveways takes a long time to get down someone's driveway just to go knock on their door. So the utilization of these high-low sirens is really to put the sound out for people to recognize. And with that, it's supporting residents on being evacuation ready. Are you ready to evacuate? So we are going to be putting out a lot of education pieces from now until September 11th for residents to help them prepare. We're going to be giving out resource kits that are basically little bags with stuff with basically giveaways in them to help in your preparation. So there's going to be a lot. It's going to be going on tomorrow. We're going to be making our first large announcement with a schedule for now until September 11th of kind of the events that people can be looking at, of where to pick up your resource kit if you're going to be participating in the evacuation exercise. So more to come on that, but I really would like people to really subscribe to our Instagram. It's called Learn, Prepare, Survive. And that's there's 2 Woodside Fire Instagrams, but that is the one that we use district-wide as far as education and updates go for the district on exactly what we're doing throughout the district in the Bureau of Fire Prevention and Life Safety, which encompasses all the prevention division, all of emergency preparedness, and our fuel mitigation division are all made up into that one bureau that I oversee. And I'll take questions after, so let me just get through the update because I know we took a lot of time on the other one. We are in full swing of the chipping season, and that's been going very well. It's great to see the increase. We have seen a lot more people actively involved in chipping. We have our reservation page, which has been really helpful that people are utilizing because we are requiring that you do need to make a reservation. The dates are the same. That hasn't changed. So I'm going to say again, you're used to chipping at certain times of the year. That has not changed. What has changed is that you go to our website and you make a reservation, basically saying on the date that you guys are going to be out here, yes, I'm going to have a pile. That's basically what the reservation does, because what it's doing is it's helping us collect great statistics and information so that we can pull, especially for Firewise. If a Firewise community said, hey, how well did we do? We could say, oh, your area, you guys put out 83 piles and we chipped, 200 and something cubic feet or whatever the numbers are. So we're reporting those monthly on our monthly board reports, what we're doing in the communities. And for example, I can tell you for the month of June, in Portola Valley Ranch, there were 54 piles that were chipped, 53 cubic yards. And let's see, we were in a lot of Woodside, Alpine Hills, 22 piles, 20 cubic yards. And that was all for Portola Valley for the month of June. The rest was unincorporated and Woodside. But in total, throughout the district, putting Portola Valley and the unincorporated and Woodside, we did a total of 198 cubic yards with 271 piles. So that was just in June alone. So we report all the statistics every month on our board report. So if you're interested in that, I also want to highlight that coming up next month, so we're in July, so August, we just finished adopting a new master fee schedule. And from that, now we're going to be able to we're putting out the approval to the board that we will be offering additional chipping services at a cost recovery rate. So it's not like a regular cost to hire a company. It's just going to be to recoup the cost for what we pay staff to do chipping. So if you have additional chipping or chipping that comes outside of our chipping season, we'll be able to provide that service. The other program that we're going to be bringing out, it's a fuel reduction program. And this program has been launched and in support for people in need or on fixed incomes or seniors or people with abilities, with disabilities, to support them to be able to come on their property and do fuel reduction for them. So our crews would come out on the property. We can limb up the trees. We can do the mowing. We could haul away stuff. So we have been talking to different committees for a long time since I started as fire marshal, and it was, how can we assist this population? So this is a program that we thought we could do to help assist that population in our district to be able to comply with our ordinance and support them. And again, it would be at a cost, but it would be at a cost recovery rate. But there are specific requirements, and that'll be posted on our website once we get it approved and it goes live. But that'll be in the coming month. Next, with our community risk area, Selena did an amazing presentation. She's done 2 this past month, one of which we really want to create a program around, and that has been for our senior population. It's called Ready and Able. It was done at the Sequoias, and the Sequoias, we've always done a presentation, but this one was unique, and we felt that this one would be well received throughout the entire district, because it talks more about what you can, there's a lot of CERT people, but there's CERT people that we wouldn't expect them to start doing CPR. You're an 80-year-old person, you're not going to be doing CPR on someone. So it was how you could still be a resource and a support to your neighbors. And that's this Ready and Able presentation that's now on our Instagram feed that you can watch at your own time, but we are building a program around it on things of what our senior population can do to still be resourceful and still support their neighbors. The other presentation she did was in Ladera. It was called Thinking Like Fire. This was also a well-received, great presentation that Selena did there. And it was more on the level of how to be prepared. And we always do a lot of preparedness, but this is now in conjunction with the new information we have out there from research and studies, and what people need to expect, and how they can prepare their homes, how they can prepare their neighbors, how they can prepare their families. So there was a lot more information. That's also, we have it on our Instagram that links to the channel with that video if you'd like to watch that. So those have been great presentations. The last thing that I wanted to just bring up really quick is I have, at many committees, I give a lot of reports, but I just wanted to make sure that I stress that I want to say thank you to all our residents and volunteers, to all our committees that surround us. I think it's special and it's unusual. I've never worked in a district or a municipality that had so many people made up of committees that give up their time for a purpose. No matter what committee you're on, conservation, wildfire preparedness, emergency preparedness, all the committees throughout the district, it's really, I don't think we'd be able to accomplish as much as we do without the help of all the residents and their time to volunteer. And it really means a lot. And I just want to say that I'm very thankful to have the support of all the committees and everything that you all do and are willing to do for your community. And I think that's what also makes me want to do so much in return to everywhere we cover, is because when you feel like people really care, you want to do that much more to help them. So thank you to everybody. And that's my report.
Could I ask a real quick question? Could you clarify the Instagram?
Yes, it's called Learn, Prepare, Survive.
Because I just checked real quick on the website and it only brings up your Woodside Fire Protection District Instagram thing. So it might be helpful.
Oh, it's
that.
okay. Thank you. I thought we had updated that. Thank you. I'll make
I-
sure it's on our Instagram page.
I put a link in the minutes. If you look in the minutes, yeah.
Thanks,
I
MJ.
snuck one in there. Well, nobody reads the minutes.
Any other
Yeah.
questions?
I had a question, Kim. Could you talk about the two recent fires that?
Oh,
last-
yes. So there was the one on Arrestradero you wanted to touch on. I know sometimes, so a lot of people don't know, we actually in our county, we have fires every day. They may not happen in Portola Valley every day, but they happen Menlo Park, Redwood City, Woodside, Portola. We always have fires. They just don't get advertised unless it's something that's a larger scale where people can see. Because there's some that were up in the hills and nobody knows about it because it's not in anyone's face. But Arrestradero, that's kind of in a area where a lot of people are getting through and it affects traffic. There is no, so in the investigation, there was no, the witnesses that we had with the information they provided, it wasn't enough to give a cause to what started it. So the cause is undetermined currently. Fire investigations are a lot of times left undetermined, but still open because new information can come about. So they always stay ongoing. But currently, that's all we have. There's a lot of speculation, but there's nothing that we can say this definitely. We can't rule out anything because there's too many possibilities. But it was, I know I did have a couple emails and questions of people saying, well, I didn't get an SMC alert. And that's another level of education to put out is an SMC alert. When it goes out, it's really when there's an action that's going to be involved in it. And there was no reason to really put it out because the fire was contained and there was nothing more for residents to do. We're not going to send an alert just because, hey, there's a fire. We just want you to know. That's just not going to happen. Now, if there was something that was getting larger and we needed people to do something specific, like go this way, don't go this way, or what was really going to cause a problem, then an alert would go out on that level. And just in comparison with the evacuation exercise, I just want to, and I'm trying to say this as often as I can when I speak on the evacuation exercise. SMC alert is like the lowest on the priority level of alertness levels. We will be utilizing the WEA alert, which is WEA. It stands for Wireless Emergency Alert. And that is when you hear the Amber Alert or the missing person alert that just goes off on your phone. That's that weird sound that everybody gets. Everyone in the room's like, oh, what's going on? That's a WEA alert. And that's controlled by the San Mateo County Department of Emergency Management. They're the ones who are going to be issuing the alert for that evacuation exercise. But it would be the same one that we would utilize if we were in a situation where we needed urgent emergency action right now. That is the level of alert that we would hit. We wouldn't do an SMC alert for that. An SMC alert may go out later, maybe to Woodside, saying, hey, there's an active wildfire going on in Portola Valley, to stay clear of, causing, maybe don't be using the roads so much because we're going to need these roads to evacuate all these people that are evacuating. but that's low level. So just wanted to make that distinction clear. But so that's the Arrestradero fire. It's what it was. It didn't grow. Sometimes people hear acres, they're like, oh my God, that's a lot. For us, it's really not much when it's contained. And thankfully, the weather was cooperating, so it was contained well. The other fire, you were talking about was it 280? Is that the other one you're, okay. So there have been 280 fires in the last year. And the most recent one that we had was a little bit outside our jurisdiction, though we were still part of the incident. And that one was caused by a vehicle. So that was a vehicle that was on the road that caught fire, that then caught the vegetation on fire. The thing to note for both fires that have happened on 280 in the past year is the fact that these fires happened when it wasn't a windy day and it jumped the freeway. That's 8 lanes that it jumped. And it jumped through the embers that were flying in a non-windy day. So it just is a reminder of how quickly fires spread and can move just from the embers. And you don't need a lot of wind for them to travel. They travel in the lightest breeze. So that's been amazing for us. We've never encountered that. We never thought that that would be possible. But the fact that it's happened twice in the past year just becomes extra alarming that something simple that was a car fire was able to jump 8 lanes. And that's that one. So that one was a vehicle fire. So that one we have how that one was. And MJ, you actually reminded me something I wanted to report on. I know our fire chief likes to, even our previous chiefs, they like to report this so that people know what's going on in the state. But currently in the state of California, we have had 3,473 wildfires. 102,918 acres have been burned, with a total of 41 structures destroyed and 0 fatalities. So we're moving along in this year. It's interesting when you compare numbers from year to year. We're in our average burning, I'll say. We're not more than any other year or less, but we're on that track. And we've also deployed our first deployment from Woodside Fire. One of our firefighters, he was deployed to go to a fire as a fire line medic. So it wasn't a whole resource. It was one single person, so one single resource. And he is out there for the next 16 days. So that's the first deployment of the year, which is pretty amazing because usually it's crews that go, and this has just been a single resource. Thank you. Anything else?
Thanks, Kim. That was great.
All right, thank
As
you.
always.
And I'm going to say goodbye. I got to get to another meeting. So
Yeah.
it's good to see you all. You have my contact if anything else comes up. Thank you.
Thanks, Kim. Okay, Patty, 100% Firewise update.
Okay, things are rolling along. Summer's a little slow, but we're still working on things. So Vivek provided an update on his work in Alpine Hills outside of Joyce's area. He's looking for 10 volunteers. He's up to 7. So he's really moving along. He finds that word of mouth is the best way to go. You want to tell him what you're doing next?
Yeah, so basically I've been looking around for volunteers because it's 250 homes. So I think 10 volunteers for block captains would be the right number. Each one with 25 homes, because we've had experience in Joyce's area. It's about 40 homes that we've got Firewise. And essentially Joyce did it, but with some help from others. So I think 1 per 25 homes is the right number. So I'm looking for 10, but so far it's been tough going. Right? People are not volunteering, and plus there are a lot of people out in summer. But I've got 7, and I think by July 19th, on the end of July, I should have all 10. Even if I don't have all 10 by end of July, I'm going to start the process. So, whether it's 40 homes or 25 homes, is pretty much similar in terms of work. So then we'll start with a kickoff. Maybe Joyce, you could come to that. I'll invite you guys, maybe Patty, to say how you've done in Woodside, what you've done in the South, Alpine Hills South. And then people want to know what work they actually have to do. So we're going to show them that. We're going to show them the Firewise planning process, the education process. the recruitment process, going to each home and finding out what to do. So all that will start. So I'm not waiting for 10. If I don't get 10, I'll just get going. So it's going to be a long haul, but it's not going to be an overnight process. But that's at least we got to start somewhere. And I think we've got enough mass to start.
Yeah, that sounds great. Other comments?
Wanda's still working on her areas in terms of identifying contacts for Nathorst primarily and Willowbrook. So we're still searching there. In terms of my work, I tried to get the council, I don't know what I'm going to call it, of all of the PV Firewise leaders together. I found out summer's not a good time to have a meeting. My doodle results were very low. So I'm going to scratch that and try again in the fall. So I'm still hoping to get my PV Firewise leaders together. I was going to ask Kim about Priory. I did meet with the Priory on Firewise. I don't know if I mentioned that last meeting, but they're very interested in cooperating. They are already doing a lot of mitigation work in coordination with Woodside Fire, but they're not a Firewise community. They are also do not have any CERT volunteers. So we talked about integrating them into some of those programs. The school environment's a little unique, doesn't lend itself to Firewise as easily as a residential neighborhood. So I did have a meeting with Kim a couple of weeks ago, and we talked about developing what a Firewise application would look like for a school ground. So I need to follow up with Kim on that. And if we do that, then I could maybe apply that to Ormondale and Corte Madera as well. Lower Alpine is moving along. They have their risk assessment completed, and they are holding a meeting this weekend to develop their objectives. So I think that application will be going in fairly quickly. And I am still in contact with Blue Oaks, and they had a neighborhood meeting last week, and I'm looking for an update on that in the next week or so to understand what the next steps would be for Blue Oaks. So that's my update.
Okay, that's great. Thank you, Patty. No other questions? So Chris, do you want to talk about the PV Forum dashboard? He's done some really interesting work there.
Sure, I'll give you the abbreviated version in the interest of time. Check it out. Sure. Okay, so let me give a little context here so you don't read too much into it. Basically, as part of a subcommittee on the Conservation Committee, I was creating some infrastructure to help give a little bit of direction for where we focus and some of what we're doing. And one of the exercises among them was basically using conversations from PV forums to understand both what's of interest to the community and also sometimes what kind of impact we're having, just so we can understand that a bit better. It's a bit of a dance because, one impacts the other. But over time, some of the trends are interesting and can inform decisions. I thought since I did that, it was pretty easy to do it for the Wildfire Preparedness committee. So I sent that over to MJ, and she asked me to do one also for insurance, and I pulled that together. And so that's what this is. It's not a fully I spent a lot of time on this, so take it more. If it's interesting, I can probably refine it for you. And if it's not, that's fine. The only other comments to say is that basically we didn't scrape the forums. This is basically all the email that has come to me from the forums over the last 8 years since Rebecca migrated it over to Mark Fletcher's Groups IO platform. And I've been receiving these. And so basically just took a look at all those with AI and categorize them. So I'm going to go ahead and start with the insurance one. Just going to pick a couple things to orient you, and I'll give you access to it. I will say I did also make sure anything on this that had to do with residents was anonymous. It's not intended to surveil who said what. It's really just to help you kind of understand the things that are important to you. So as you can see up at the top, it sort of summarizes just how many threads are relevant to, in this case, the fire insurance issue, how many posts there were, the full history it covers, et cetera, et cetera. I think the things you can kind of see in this top card basically are, it's not immediately obvious, but in 2021, a few things happened. State Farm had a 47% rate hike nationwide, had a non-renewal, the FAIR plan, Fortune covered PV, and it started this general trend of things that kind of climaxed in 2024 when a lot of things that everyone just talked about kind of came to a head. It was like solid every month in 2024. There were just issues related to this committee. Some of the ones I think are kind of interesting that I'll jump down to that you may find useful is this topic hotspot basically breaks down what the community is mostly talking about. So you can see in here, relevant, I guess, to what Lem was talking about, replacement search and brokers are a big topic. Non-renewals and cancellations are a big topic. If you go over to that card next to it, you can kind of see a breakdown in those years of what's making up the conversation. Again, none of this speaks to any kind of action, but it just gives you kind of an idea of what's going on. Underneath it, you can sort of see who's driving the conversation. In this case, for insurance, it's largely resident driven because it's them talking about the challenges they're having with insurance and things like that. You'll see something different when I jump over here to wildfire prep. In the interest of time, because again, I'll give this to you so you can explore it. But I'm going to jump down to one that MJ had me create, which is specifically on Firewise. So you can see there really kind of in 2022 when things were starting to get started with Bear Gulch, 2024, some of the first WPC tips and the farmers market happened. And then it's steadily been picking up. I mean, this is estimating what it would be, but even now, halfway into the year, obviously there's been a steady cadence. And the thing that's really different, if you look down from before, it's really a lot of the leadership in this committee is leading the conversation. So there's been a steady stream of kind of things generating conversations on the forum. So it's interesting. It's not necessarily, again, this is not like a fully baked, useful product, but in some cases, if you're trying to see if you're making an impact or if you're trying to see where different conversations are happening or what's of interest, it can be useful. That's probably more actionable in conservation where the topics tend to be a little softer. There's a lot of focus here on what's trying to be accomplished. But anyway, that's pretty much it. If you have any questions, happy to answer them. But otherwise, I'll just send you guys like links to it. Happy to kind of like play with it and take a look.
You said you were going to send this to the.
Yeah, I'll send it out.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. That was such a great piece of work. So since I'm sorry we can't spend more time. I didn't work. Oh, thank you. Okay, that was great work, Chris. Yeah, thank you, Patty. Let's see, I didn't do anything on the webpage. So Chris, do you want to do a really brief conservation update?
Yeah, I'll do a quick one. I wasn't at the last meeting, but I did watch it. So 3 things I wanted to call out that I think are relevant to this group. It got brought up that there's a bit of a landscaping plan gap that's happened from last year. We're seeing a lot fewer plans than we saw in 2025. The planning staff clarified that's now because ASC routed site development permits come to the CC. Building permits don't require planning plans. Irrigated landscapes over 500 square feet are anymore. That's caused a conversation where there's a gap where vegetation, including flammable planting, like we recently saw in English laurel hedge, are kind of popping through before somebody from the committee could kind of intervene in those cases and guide them to something maybe less flammable. I think that's an ongoing conversation. The town's confirmed it now has code enforcement capacity. So basically, if you see something that doesn't look right, you should tell them and they'll follow up on it. Let's see. They talked about the cancel signal. There's no bandwidth for ordinance changes until at least January after the revenue measure. The planned objective standards rewrite design guidelines is basically the thing we were looking at. It's a natural place to fold in fire safe landscaping requirements, which we've been trying to update for a while. That probably makes sense to partner closely with this committee in terms of making sure that the standards, so the Conservation Committee in the ordinance has requirements that we publish standards of what should be planted in certain cases. The current one is pretty out of date in terms of what's being used. It's good on natives, but it doesn't really clarify very well flammable versus non-flammable. So that's something we're kind of watching, but that's going to be slow rolled a little bit. And then the only other issue is there's been some site inspections coming up with where the ASCC is basically using pretty blunt decision-making in terms of where redwood should be and not be. It came up in discussion. We have a subcommittee investigating it because there are some parts where microclimates are good for redwoods, but in general, where they're not suitable and they're artificially planted and they're struggling, like we're encouraging them to be removed. There's no objection from the Conservation Committee. So those are the three I took away. You know, if there's questions, I may not be able to answer them, but you're welcome to ask them. Maybe Rebecca was there. I don't know. Okay, she could answer them.
Okay, thanks, Chris. Let's see. So our next meeting is August 20th. Is anyone? Well, I guess now you can be on Zoom, but is anyone planning to be absent? No. Okay, so it's 11:37. I'm going to adjourn the meeting. Thank you very much. I hope that was worthwhile today.
Thank you.